Good morning to you, Desiree and Naledi, as well as the viewers at home. The second summit on gender-based violence and femicide has kicked off here at the Gallagher Estate in Midrand. Now, I want to focus on the criminal justice system. The themes here are acceleration, amplification, and accountability now. A lot of victims of gender-based violence and femicide rely on this criminal justice system for the justice that they yearn for in the plight of women and children in this country. I want to bring in National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batohi, to talk on her role regarding the fight in gender-based violence and femicide, some of the challenges they are facing, and what they need to do further to eradicate the scourge. So I first want to talk on the criminal justice system as a whole, how it places the burden of proof or the burden of evidence on the victims themselves, leaving them in a place where they feel despondent, where they don't have any trust in the criminal justice system. Is there any way that cases of gender-based violence can be approached in order to be sensitive or victim-centered rather than focusing on bearing the onus of proof on the victim rather?
I think our criminal justice system is designed such that the burden of proof, of the onus of proof, is on the state. And we as prosecutors represent the state or the victims in these particular cases. So, that is the way our system is designed. But the reality is that although there's a lot happening in the criminal justice in terms of trying to address gender-based violence, the sad reality is that the majority of victims or survivors of gender-based violence do not see justice. And that is not because of the efforts of the criminal justice system. As a prosecuting authority, we are doing a lot of really good work in terms of trying to be more victim-sensitive, victim-friendly, and trying to ensure that those that do approach the criminal justice system receive the necessary support that they need to go through this process. And one of the things that we're doing in that regard is the establishment of more Tutuzela care centers, which was set up. And at the moment we have 60 Tutuzela care centers. And this is where the victim receives the various services. And we hope that we're able to make the unbearable bearable for victims of these crimes. And so we're trying to really, working with business and the private sector, we're trying to really create more Tutuzela care centers and working with our partners in the system, the Department of Health, Social Development, lots of private sector NGOs working with us to try to ensure that the victims are not re-traumatized and that more victims actually come forward because, as you said, they have more confidence and trust that they will be supported through the process. So we're doing a lot in that sense. We're working together with the South African Police Service. The lack of DNA evidence was a huge problem in terms of trying to identify perpetrators. I'm really pleased that a lot of work has happened here and the numbers of reports, positive reports that we are receiving at the National Prosecuting Authority has increased almost astronomically in the past 6 to 8 months. So that is also good because what it's doing is it's allowed us to, in some instances, identify serial rapists. And that's really important that we actually target this particular group with the SAPs so that we can try to make an impact. But there's a lot of work to be done. But I really do want to say that the sentences in the courts are improving and increasing. There's lots of life sentences, lots of sentences, 20 and 25%, 10, 20 and 25 years, 10 to 20 years. But it's not having the impact of reducing these particular types of crimes. And we've got to ask ourselves why. And there are various reasons for that. One of the reasons is the poor detection rate. We have to look at how we're able to detect these cases better so that we are able to ensure that the numbers of victims that actually receive justice is increased.
Let's talk a bit about the DNA and stronger evidence such as the J88, which are critical in the stranger rapes cases. A lot of victims have been failed due to that issue. Is that the only approach that the NPA takes in order to successfully prosecute a case? Are there not other ways you can convict in cases such as stranger rapes without relying solely on this element of DNA?
Look, at the end of the day, there's various types of evidence that you can collect during an investigation. And I want to make it very clear, the NPA does not investigate crimes. The police investigate, and then the dockets are brought to the NPA. And so the various types of evidence, like the victim statements, like the first report that a victim might make to a friend, a family member, like the J88 that you mentioned, which is the medical report of the doctor. So, it's the DNA is not the only evidence that will, at the end of the day, determine whether a prosecution is successful or not. But it's a really, really important a piece of forensic evidence that can really almost make it difficult for an accused person to evade justice. But look, in many cases we don't get DNA for various reasons, but there have been successful prosecutions because we've used various other types of evidence in order to prove that the accused is the person who perpetrated the offense.
In the criminal justice system, do you feel that your co-stakeholders have let you down in this scourge? If you have to look at the reflective period that you are here to reflect on, have you received the necessary support from your co-stakeholders, because you need assistance from the police in order to build a solid case? Do you feel that they have played their parts in order to fight the scourge?
I want to emphasize that we have really good stakeholder relationships with a whole range of stakeholders, not just in government, but as I mentioned, also outside of government, with regard to NGOs, etc., that provide a lot of really good support to victims to help them become survivors. So stakeholder management and support has been really good. But as I said earlier on, we've got to look at why we're not able to increase the detection rate. But I also want to make it very clear that the criminal justice system is not going to solve this problem. That we've got to look beyond the criminal justice system. We've got to look at our communities. We've got to look at why do men in society, South African men, commit these offenses, not just against women, but against children as well. We've got to look at what do we need to do outside of the criminal justice system to ensure that these crimes are not committed. It's a scourge, it's a pandemic in our country. Everyone correctly looks to the criminal justice system, and we're really trying our best to do what we can. But the solutions don't lie in the criminal justice system. But we want to work with our partners to ensure that we really try to bring down these numbers that are completely unacceptable. I think the average is about every day 7 women and 2 children are murdered every day. I mean, that's an unacceptable statistic. As we're standing here, someone is being abused. So we've got to look at, as a society, what do we need to do? What kind of values do we inculcate in our people, in our children? What do we do as mothers? How do we bring up our children? So there's a lot that needs to happen outside the criminal justice system to address the scourge. But we are, notwithstanding that, we're really trying to do our best to help the victims of these atrocities, to help make the unbearable bearable, by approaching it in a very, very victim-centered approach. But at the end of the day, we are still, far from finding the right solutions.
And lastly, a big theme here is accountability. If you focus just on the National Prosecuting Authority, just in terms of the GBV scorecard, honestly, where do you feel the NPA is sitting today? If you had to honestly reflect on the work you've done.
Yeah. No, of course, accountability is one of our key pillars in the National Prosecuting Authority. We are accountable to the people of South Africa. So if you look at the numbers of cases that actually land up on a prosecutor's desk, and that's important, we can only be accountable for what reaches the prosecutor's desk. And if you look at that, the conviction rates are about 75% in the specialized sexual offences courts, and in the general regional courts as well. We're over 70%. And we're doing a lot of really good work in terms of the Tutuzela care centres. We've actually exceeded our target for this year in terms of the number of these centres that we want to set up together with our partners. So I think as the National Prosecuting Authority, we are doing really good work in this space to try to help the victims of crime. But we're just one part of a huge system. And at the end of the day, victims and survivors look at the entire system. And that is where the solutions lie. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen still within the system to ensure that the victims of these crimes do feel that they're receiving justice. At the moment, there's a very small percentage. We've got to increase that. But in the National Prosecuting Authority, I'm very proud of what we're doing in our SOCA unit, Sexual Offences and Community Affairs. And hopefully we will, try to make sure that victims that do work with us are not re-traumatized, that they get the support that they need. We have a very empathetic approach to the victims. So I'm really pleased with what we're doing, but at the end of the day, we can't celebrate at the moment because as a country, we're far from where we should be in terms of addressing the scourge.
All right, thank you so much. That was Advocate Shamila Batohi, conceding that there is still much work that needs to be done in eradicating the scourge against gender-based violence and femicide. As you can see behind me, the program is well underway. We expect that close to 12, the president will give his keynote address. SABC News will be able to give you that live over to you in studio.